DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesianicristo.
And good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Sunny Side Up Family Talks. I'm one of your hosts, Brother Robert DePaulis, joining you here from sunny Tampa, Florida. How appropriate for the title here. But we also wanted to welcome this morning my co-panelist, Sister Audrey, who also happens to be here in Tampa this morning. Good morning, Sister Audrey.
Hello, good morning, magandang umaga, ciao, hola, and to all of those viewing us, because we know that it's not just here in the beautiful Sunshine Coast of Tampa Bay. We know that the show extends to all of you across the world. So thank you so much for joining us, no matter what time zone you're in. Please drop it down in the comments. We would love to know where you're from, and then please also include any shout outs, because we would love to include that in our show for this morning on our Sunny Side Up Family Talks. And we're so excited to talk about today's topic as usual. But I think this is something that could probably expand to the other new moms across the globe that are joining in this chapter with me, right, Brother Robert?
Absolutely. And it's so ironic that you mentioned the word new moms, because, you know, I happen to be sitting across the studio here from a soon-to-be new mom / rookie mom. Right? You literally have got a 14-month-old. I love to call him a rabbit, because as he's running around trying to keep up with him is like trying to chase a rabbit in the field.
Yeah,
but
no, this is my rookie year of motherhood, soon to be my second season.
Yes. Yeah, it's like a popular television show. You've been renewed for a second season. So you've got your the next one coming up, and we are super excited about it, because today's topic, as you can see here on the bottom, is called Tiny Humans, Big Feelings. And that really was, I think, very appropriate, because this topic came about from a conversation we had post-show about 3 weeks ago with Sister Joy. And we were all sitting around talking about, you know, how there's so many different parenting styles. Because one of the neat things about Sunny Side Up Family Talks is, obviously, we're not child psychologists. We're not licensed marriage counselors. We're simply people who lived through these different eras in life, different seasons, as many people like to call them. Myself, I think we just talked about this before the show. I'm literally on the cusp of being a Gen X and a baby boomer, right? Or as so eloquently referred to as boomers by many of the youth. But I believe that I identify closer to being a boomer in just my thought processes as a baby boomer, you know, kind of old school, kind of traditional. And I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by my fellow co-hosts who are from different generations as well. So now you, Sister Audrey, are more on the slightly younger end of that generational spectrum, right?
Oh, not slightly. I mean, there's a generation. No, we're the new family next door that's still figuring it out and trying. I mean, because it's I mean, in how quickly information gets spread around nowadays, it's whatever research happened a few weeks ago could be debunked this week or even this morning, and we would probably find out about it. So we're trying the things that we were exposed to when we were younger, because I think that's the natural cycle of it, right? When you become a parent, it's like, oh, I know, or not even when you become yet. It's like when you're planning to have a family, you talk with your partner and you ask, like, you know, your spouse, what are things that you want to make sure that we do together as a married couple, and what are some things that we want to make sure we don't do for our kids. And more likely than not, is probably things that we went through as kids that we probably didn't like or didn't like the turnout of. So, I mean, as my mom always says, our role as parents is to bring up the next generation even better. So that constant teaching style, it's fascinating what has lasted through generations and is, I would say, timeless. And then also bringing in new ideas that I would say would reinforce those timeless concepts as opposed to reinventing the wheel.
I'd agree. And we always talk about wanting to raise children to be better than us, right? We want our children to have better experiences than we had. We want our children, our grandchildren, and in mine and Lulu's case, Sister Lulu's case, we have grandchildren that we also want to have that are raised that are going to have better experiences and as much as possible better upbringing. And to your point, when we talk about today's topic specifically about how managing feelings are, I think that just I watch this evolution of how parenting has kind of changed, because we talk about this all the time, that when we first had kids, there wasn't a whole lot of reference material that was available outside of talking to friends who have kids and our doctors, and the one book that was available, which was sort of the mainstream document on what to expect when you're what to expect when you're expecting. And all of that compiled together was really the core of how we raise children. Other than that, it was pretty much trial and error. And we always applaud ourselves that our children have lived this long. They survived. and it's but that's how parenting was back then. And even earlier than that, where today you've got so much content, you've got so much material and information that's available to you, and that's a good thing, but it's also something you have to be careful about. You've got to be very cautious about all of this access. I always tell everyone who wants to jump on Google, like my wife does, to look up everything, you've got to be able to verify, validate, look for second resources, and don't just rely on a single piece of information that you pull in, especially if it's coming in through social media. It's a great way to pull information in, but don't use TikTok as your way of raising your children. That is
No,
not
absolutely
that
not.
is that is not the way that you're going to be able to do what's best for them, because you've got to be able to measure these experiences. So when we talk about this topic specifically, there are so many different ways of parenting. Because, like, for example, you have a 14-year-old, wow, a 14-month-old, almost 15-month-old, right?
Sometimes he
And
acts like he's 14.
I just realized 15 months today, isn't it?
15 months today. Yes, to
Wow.
the day.
Happy birthday, baby Jay, on your 15-month birthday. But at that age, the children are at very different stages, right? Because is this what you would consider toddler at this point?
Oh, yes. I feel like
Are
after
they
he turned,
toddling? They're
yeah,
toddling
no,
around now at the pool.
1,000%. After he turned 1, it's almost like he realized he was going through a transformation. He's gaining new powers, and then just became this new identity. And it truly happened within, I would say, like, for most qualities, it happened within a week's time of change. But for some, it was like night and day, literally. So yeah,
So
I think he's fully aware that he's gained new skills and he's exploring the world from a different perspective now.
So as a toddler, he's obviously developing feelings, right? And more importantly, they're able to express those feelings in ways that are very deliberate, right? So when they're mad, they definitely can show you that they're mad. When they're frustrated, they can definitely show you that they're frustrated. When they were infants, when he was a baby, when baby Jay was just a little infant newborn, everything was either just a cry or a coo, right? I think is really the way
Mhm.
to discern like what was going on, and you're scratching your head as a parent, right? As we all do, wondering, well, is the cry because I'm hungry, because I've got a dirty diaper, because I'm just upset at the world, because I just woke up in a bad mood. Really difficult to tell. Where I think now, do you feel that he's at a point where you're able to very well, I don't want to say clearly, but it's easier for you to distinguish what the feelings are that he's expressing or about?
I think for him it's black and white, but it's also ambiguous. So it's like a big yes, like I love this, or a big no, I absolutely do not want this, and something needs to change. But then the ambiguity comes with, okay, about what? like, and he's just pointing in a general direction, hoping you just figure out. So it's almost like it's a puzzle. It teaches you to be patient with the situation because he's also going through a big reconstruction of his brain during this time, but doesn't have like the vernacular, the vocabulary to express it. And I think that's on the adults to figure it out instead of taking it out on the child and then throwing in an adult tantrum to say.
Right. Well, and when we talk about, tantrums, the word tantrum is sometimes maybe a little bit extreme to describe their sort of their emotional responses to things. But when they could be just tired, right? They could be hungry, they could maybe even be overstimulated, right? It's funny we use the term overstimulated because that could be
Mm.
things like when somebody sings, when you've got a big crowd of people singing I don't know, a happy birthday song and clapping and cheering and the reaction to that, right? Which is really surprising, right?
Oh yeah. No, I think it's because they're feeling these big emotions very intensely because this is a part of their milestone in development where their brain is maturing very early. And I mean, this is all learning from various materials across the board, including, thank you, my nursing courses. um but you're there as they're going through this development. It's like, like impulse control, or just waiting, or learning to share, or like to calm down from such a high stimulating moment. It's all, I mean, isn't it until like 25 years old? Somebody correct me on that. For boys especially, your prefrontal cortex doesn't establish until 21 or 25. Can anyone attest to that in the comments? I
I don't
don't
know.
know. I'm not an
Depending
expert.
on, depending if you ask certain wives, that doesn't develop till like they're in their 50s.
Right.
So, if you ask my wife, she'd tell you it's still in development. But
However many decades later. But yeah, I mean, like,
exactly.
their brains are just rewiring, and what that means is it's opening up a new avenue of just development. And you just all the goal at the end of the day is just, okay, reassure them, I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere as mommy or daddy.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest challenge because with kids, they have obviously all of these big emotional episodes, right? That's what we'll call them. And the thing that they probably are the most frustrated about is the fact that they feel like they can't accurately communicate what it is that they want. And in their minds, they're thinking that they are. And we are just as adults don't get it, maybe. And they're saying, well, why don't you get what I'm asking you? Now I'm frustrated, and now I'm going to go ahead and express my frustration through this like episode, right? And especially when they're young, like, baby J is not old enough yet to really verbally communicate, so he's just expressing everything through different emotions and hand gestures and things. And speaking of hand gestures, I mean, that's one of the things that's very, I think we're trying to build on, because you guys have done a great job in teaching him how to communicate, since he can't
Mm.
speak it yet, using his hands, right? So he'll say please. He's very, very proficient at saying please, and
Patience, consistency, and
more,
repetition.
right, and more, right. So but what'll happen is that he now gets that as a trigger, that he thinks, okay, well, please gets me what I want, but just
Mm.
this to an adult means nothing. So we're literally constantly grabbing stuff off the shelf, like, is this what you want? And he's like, no, you don't get it. What's wrong with you? We're reaching for milk or juice or trying to give him something else. So I think again, it's just a matter of really working on trying to build sort of that enhanced communication with them and better understanding, because as grandparents especially, and I speak as a grandparent, um, we immediately just want to satisfy whatever their thing is, right? It's like, no, we're not trying to level set anything for them. We're just like, oh, you're crying, I'm going to give you something to make you stop crying. and that's kind of a visceral reaction as grandparents. And I know that it's kind of in contrary to what you and RJ as parents want to do, right? And this is a common theme. All you grandparents that are out there, Lolos and Lolas, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the thing we want to do, right? We want to immediately jump in and we want to help our grandchildren to stop crying. We want to make them feel better. And sometimes that's not necessarily in their best interest, right?
Like the sugar donuts.
The sugar donut episode, by the way, not me. That was another sister in Tampa that was trying to give him
Oh, yes.
who shall
Sorry.
be nameless.
I need to specify which sugar donut episode.
Which episode? Oh, there were
'Cause
multiple.
there have been multiple.
But we I honestly, we're trying to be better at that. You know, Lulu and I talked about this just yesterday, in fact, that we've got to really ratchet down on trying to give in, because giving in is kind of the thing, right? It's
Well,
what
so
you
I
know.
do want to ask, because I mean, I think when you come in as new parents, again, you always have a strategy of like, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. But then once the moment presents itself, it's like, okay, actually scrap all of that. This is what's happening right now. We're just going to go through it. And I think I find Brother RJ and I find ourselves being a little more it's easier to feel more strict than we anticipated. But having gone through that already, and twice, what's the biggest difference now as a grandparent? I know time has long passed, but it's like you're watching your application of that in Brother RJ, doing that for baby J. But what's the biggest difference between your, I guess, almost your self-regulation of emotions versus like, okay, he's gonna be the parent.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad that you brought that, because it's one of the things that people always say is that, well, if you're going to if you want a good barometer of how well you did as a parent, right? If you want a metric to be able to measure how good of a job you did as a parent, you look at your children, especially when they're grown. You look at your kids, you look at at how centered they are, you look at their disposition, etc. So, I mean, if that was truly just the metric, then I'm going to pat myself and Galula on the back because the kids turned out okay, right? But the
They
thing
turned
is,
out wonderful.
well, yeah, well, I can't say that because I don't want their heads to get too big. But what you want to be able to do, though, is to talk about what, trying to go back and think, well, what did we do? Because I mean, obviously we raised RJ in the 90s, right? He was born in 95. Sorry, I just gave away your age. And so he's and then the early part of the 2000s, and then so that was kind of that whole period, right, of raising him. And again, there wasn't a tremendous amount of information that was available, so a lot of it was just really conditioning. I will tell you that I think a lot of that came from the behaviors that he mimicked being around other kids like him. This is a huge shout out to the CWS, or the Children's Worship Service teachers that he had growing up. He spent a tremendous amount of time with all of the the other kids that were in the children's worship services, being surrounded by them who modeled the same behaviors. So I think, along with parenting, of course, that played a huge role. Was just the fact that he was surrounded by others that modeled the same behaviors that we wanted them to have. And now, as an adult, I see him doing that with Jamie. I see you guys both doing that. And it's, as parents, I just think it's really important to be able to start creating sort of that environment for them early. The earlier, the better, right? CWS starts at around 4 years old is when we encourage parents to start bringing their children, and absolutely bring your children to the CWS. If you are joining us and for the first time, especially, we're both members of the Church of Christ. the iglesianicristo, and one of the organizations there is the Children's Worship Service as part of our Christian Family Organization, and that is the uh, what I guess in other religions they refer to it as Sunday school. It's for the young children and really focuses on teaching the children about all of the biblical teachings at their level, and it helps to really focus on behavior as well, because obviously trying to get a 4-year-old to sit still for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, even 30 minutes takes a tremendous amount of work. So a big shout out to all of the children's worship service teachers and officers around the world, because we know the battle. And you guys have done a phenomenal job with them. But I think that a lot of that is really what helped to shape some of that for him. Now with baby Jay, when you guys are seeing that, because now that he's kind of developing these emotions, um, people say that tantrums are a natural expression and they're not necessarily misbehavior. And I think that that's where a lot of people misinterpret that, right?
Mhm.
Because some parents I've seen where they treat these outbursts, these emotional outbursts, as a misbehavior on the part of the child,
Mhm.
and then they try to discipline them, which that really just I think has kind of a an opposite effect of what you want, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, and maybe this is a skill that some adults are still learning too, but the emotions come first and logic is out the window. So what you, I mean, I've found myself having episodes of this in adulthood too, but it's, in when someone is emotionally unregulated, you cannot, it's not the time or place to try to teach or try to insert logic. You can't fix it quick, right? So you gotta wait and gotta time it out or wait for the opportunity to arise where things start to calm down, and then bring in the logic and the teaching then, because I can't tell you how many times, and men, please. You can't put a band-aid on it and then it's done right away. So it's like you want to almost reassure and bring them back down from the edge of that cliff of emotional wreckage. Then just come in with that teaching moment later. So I mean with him, with baby Jay, it's harder because he can't really tell you why or what he's feeling, but I think the same application goes for adults. It's some people don't have the vernacular to express how they're feeling in words right away. So all you can do is just be a good presence and reassurance and provide a safe space.
Wow, that that sounds like that could translate very well into the way you approach things as adults with husbands. So husbands, I think that was kind of
Correct.
I think that I without saying it, I think Sister Audrey was actually telling husbands the same thing about trying to approach problems with their spouses as well. So you got to kind of let that emotional chaos calm down before you try to insert logic and fix things. And I guess it translates also obviously into to dealing with your children who are going through these emotional roller coasters, if you will, because
Well,
again.
but now don't get me wrong. It's not like we're completely helpless. I mean, same thing with our toddlers. They're, especially baby Jay, like now that he's like in that toddler era, he's really showing that he wants to, and demonstrating that he wants to do things himself, even though he'll ask for help like 3 seconds later and complain that you're not there. You're
That's
not
actually
ready to help.
that's a great point, because that need for independence that he's demonstrating now. How do you guys deal with that? Like as a grandparent, we don't want them falling, we don't want them tripping, we don't want them hitting their heads, we don't want them sticking everything in their mouth, because goodness knows everything on
Right.
the floor is going in the mouth. How do you guys deal with giving him kind of that leeway of independence? Like how do you know how much to give him to, there's this philosophy of you've got to let them fail and fall in order for them to be
Yeah.
more independent. But
It's funny you ask that because brother RJ and I were just talking about that yesterday, and I think it all depends on your personality. I've had very much been the type to, like, if you tell me the stove is hot, I'm not going to believe it until I do it myself, because it's like, okay, well, what's your perspective or bias or threshold on what hot is? And then if I do it myself, if I burn myself, it's like, okay, well, then I know. So I think I like to play things right up to the threshold. Brother RJ enjoys being there to witness, but not ever be the one to get to the very edge. And that's where our personalities are very different. So he provides a good guardrail, and I think this is why I have boys first, because they're a little more durable. Um, I mean, like, if Jamie falls, it's he's fine. He'll be just fine. I think his dad has a heart attack a little bit when he sees me handling it, but yeah,
yeah,
I think it's just finding a good balance.
and that is, and as and again, your mileage may vary as parents, right? Every parent
Right.
has different attitudes, different levels of tolerance for things like this. I know that, I'm probably, that's where RJ gets it, is probably getting it from me, is that, the minute I see him fall, I want to run and catch him, where Kalulu is much more, well, he's kind of gonna work it out. He's gonna get up. He didn't splatter. He's just gonna get up and walk. But I think as parents, we need to kind of find where that happy medium is in order for us to be able to get there. And that's why, I mean, I knew this topic was going to be one that just, we could dive so deep into it, and really miss having Sister Joy's perspective too, because she's got sort of that era of three kids that are kind of in the middle tier
Oh,
between one
right.
of them, right? But we are definitely going to continue this topic, because I think that there's a tremendous amount of additional insight that we can get. But as we always say, we are the fastest 30 minutes on radio, down to the bottom of the hour again. And I wanted to just take a couple of seconds, Sister Audrey, if you can, to just give a quick shout out to some of the folks that joined us on the chat. We love, love, love hearing from everybody there. And we had people on super early.
Oh, yes. I thank you so much for the brethren that were waiting. Um, of course, the ministers and their families. Thank you so much for always, always, always supporting us on Sunny Side Up Family Talks. It's always so great to see you all waiting for us to arrive. But we want to give a shout out to brother Mike Robinson, who says, "Yes, my prefrontal cortex is still developing." And
I'm
then
not the only one.
no, no, you're not the only one either. And then, of course, our number one fan from across the U.S., Brother Adrian Abelgas, Tita Lou can confirm this. I'm still trying to learn how to be mature. But shout out to Brother Kyle Hatosis from Sarasota Congregation. Happy birthday! We hope you have a special day today. And of course, Kat James, thank you so much for tuning in from the north. Just like I always say, there's nothing wrong with doing it the first time, and it only gets better from then on. I can attest it's better to just do it than to wait for someone else to do it for you, because then how are you going to learn?
Yeah, I would agree. I agree. That's very sage wisdom. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us today. Of course, we want to thank those that helped to make this show possible. And that begins with our beloved executive minister, Brother Eduardo Vimanalo, to our assistant, our executive minister, also Brother Angelo Irano Manalo. And we wanted to also thank Brother Wally Tarai, our station manager, and of course, our executive producer, Brother Manly Ndaya. We want to thank all of you that joined us today here on this episode. We'll be back next week again for another exciting episode of Sunny Side Up Family Talks. Here, coming from Tampa, Florida's Brother Robert, and joining me also this morning, I want to thank Sister Audrey. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. We'll continue it, keep up the conversations after we are done. Thank you.